Alrighty guys, thanks for joining me. This is your host ID Jester. Thanks for checking out my video. So what I thought I would do is do a couple tutorial videos on 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and how combat works, so that if you've been following along here on my channel, our adventure is now complete. We'll probably be looking for some new players here to join us. And if you're not familiar with 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, well, you'll learn everything you need to know right here, right now. So hopefully this will inspire you to join our merry band of adventurers out there. So we're going to be talking about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and the combat system. It should be noted that 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is pretty bare bones when it comes to rules for combat, and pretty much all the rules in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is toned down for ease of play for the players and the dungeon master. So if you're not familiar with playing any role-playing games, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons should be a good starting point for you, because there's not a lot of things you have to know, especially about combat. It's pretty bare bones and pretty easy to understand. So let's go through it step by step. So first thing that's going to happen is obviously each player is going to be in control of a character, and during their adventures they're probably going to meet people that are against them, and they're going to have an encounter. At that point, the dungeon master will say, okay, everyone roll initiative. So initiative basically is how quick everyone reacts to the situation, and the player with the highest initiative result gets to act first, and the second, and then it goes down the line from there. So having a high initiative and being able to act first obviously allows you to dictate what happens on the battlefield. So in our example here, you can see Hamtag has rolled a 21. The Evil Mage has rolled a 20. Aldrich Daw a 10. Dog Sidious a 7. The Nordic is 6. And Housefar a 5 in this situation. The second thing that'll happen is the DM will determine if anyone, any side, might be surprised. If let's say a situation where the players are moving through a dungeon, they come to a door, they hear some voices on the other side of the door, they decide, okay, let's bust in and surprise them. So they break through the door and they charge the enemies. And in that situation, the dungeon master will probably allow them a surprise round against the enemies, because the enemies didn't know they were there. Or let's say the party was asleep in their camp, and the person standing watch didn't see the enemies approaching, and all of a sudden the enemies come charging into the camp. In that situation, the party might be surprised. There might be somebody that is surprised and other people that aren't surprised based on the situation. Maybe we'll just say that Hamtag was on watch, the other players were in their tents asleep. Hamtag sees them approach, and before he has a chance to awaken anyone else, the dungeon master says roll initiative. And at that point, maybe Hamtag and the two enemies would not be surprised, but everyone else might be surprised as they're waking up from their sleep. In that situation, if you are surprised during, if the dungeon master determines that your character is surprised or the enemies are surprised, they don't get to take an action during their first round. So during the first round, they basically miss their turn. They don't get to do anything. Is kind of the default nature of what's going on with the surprise. And you don't get to take any reactions until you can't, if you're surprised, you can't move or take an action on your first turn of combat, and you can't take a reaction until that turn ends. So you can't take a reaction until after the first round is over. Each round of combat in Dungeons and Dragons is about 6 seconds. So if you got to cast a spell that lasts 1 minute, that's basically 10 rounds for you. Most combats don't last quite that long, but just keep that in mind. It is 10 rounds of combat, 6 seconds per turn. so you can kind of understand what is going on. So on the battle bit, I'm going to zoom in because it's probably really hard for you guys to see. There is these grids, and if you're playing face to face, you probably have some kind of a hex grid or something like that. Each grid normally is 5 feet for square, and then you're going to take your turn when it comes up. So in this situation, we'll just say the party was just building their campsite, and 2 creatures walk out of the bushes towards them. The dungeon master tells everyone to roll initiative, so there, in this case, is not going to be surprise. Normally, there's not surprise, but in some situations, there can be surprise. So just keep that in mind. So after the initiative rolls, and this happens every time, so sometimes you might be first, sometimes you might be last. Just depends on how the dice roll. So you can see that Hamtag actually won initiative, so he gets to do his action. So it's very important that you understand what you can do during your turn, right? What you can do is you have 2 things. You have a move action, and then you have an action in combat. These are 2 totally different things. So you have a move action, and then you have an action in combat. And those are what you can do. Your move action, you can do nothing but move. Move, 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 move. You can swim, you can crawl, you can fly. Any kind of movement is done during your movement action. Your actions in combat is something else. So there's lots of different things you can do for your actions in combat. So let's look at those. Number 1, you can take a all right, so we'll get back to that other stuff here in a minute. Let's just keep going. Actions in combat. Number 1, you can do an attack. Say you're swinging your sword or battle axe, you're shooting your bow, you're throwing your dagger. You know, you're doing an attack with a weapon, basically, at that point. So that is your action. So you can move, and you can take an action. So your move, you can reposition yourself, and then you can take your action. You can swing your sword, your battle axe, your stab someone with your dagger, whatever your attack action is. All right. Number 2, actions in combat would be cast a spell. Most likely, if we actually go down here, most spells, not all of them, but most spells, if you look, take 1 action. So most spells are an action to cast. So if I want to cast light, it costs me an action. If I want to cast Shocking Grasp, it takes me an action. If I want to cast Charm Person, it takes an action. There are some exceptions, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So you can cast a spell as an action. You can dash. So on your move action, you can move, and then for your action in combat, you can also take another move action. It's called a dash action. So if you're pretty far away from the enemy, you can take a move action. Let's say the Hamtag started back here, right? If we look at each character, you can see that they have a movement speed. In this case, it's 30 feet. We know that 30 feet is at 5-foot squares. It's basically 6 squares he can move. In 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, it doesn't matter if you move sideways, diagonal, or whatever. Each space is 5 feet. So Hamtag could use a move action. He can go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Then for his action in combat, you can decide to choose a dash action. His dash action allows him to move again. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Let's go 30. There we go. So there he's taken his action, he's taken his move action. Now he's taken his action as combat. He's done. He can't do anything else. There are a few other actions I should mention while we're talking about this. There are bonus actions, and you would only get a bonus action if the spell tells you you have it as a bonus action. There are a few free actions, such as speaking. You can speak to someone as you're approaching them or something like that. And there are reactions. Each person, each creature gets one reaction per turn. Some spells are actually reactions. We'll look at that here in a second. So, a dash action, move action can't do anything but move. Okay, so the only thing you can do with your move action is do some kind of movement, either flying if you have that ability, swimming, crawling, climbing, whatever. Your action in combat can be one of many things, so that's what we're covering. You can take an attack action, you can cast a spell, you could do the dash action, you can disengage. So if I'm up against, adjacent to someone, you notice whenever I highlight someone in Fantasy Grounds here, whenever I mouse over someone, you can see all the spaces next to them are darkened. That is basically their threatening area. If you move out of their threatening area, they get a free attack on you, right? So if Hamtag is inside both of these guys' areas, he decides to move away, they both get a free attack on him because he's left both the Glass Staff, the evil wizard, and he's also left Nordic, the monster here. He's left both of their threatening areas. Again, he was inside both of their threatening areas. If he chooses to, on his turn, to move away, they would get an attack of opportunity if the enemies choose to use their reaction to do that. That's up to the enemies to decide that. But that is very dangerous if you're adjacent to someone and try to move away from them. It makes sense. If you're standing next to me, you try to move away, not cautiously, but just turn your back and start moving, then I'm going to slash you in the back with my battle axe. Pretty simple. Or I'm going to stab you with my dagger, or whatever the situation is. In this case, the Nordic would slash you with his claws, right? The way to prevent that from happening is to take a disengage action. So I have a move action. This is not a move action. This is a disengage action, right? A disengage action allows me to disengage from the enemy cautiously, move away from them so they do not get attacks of opportunity on me. Very important you understand that. That is not a move action. That is a disengage action. Remember, move actions, the only thing you can do for a move action is move, right? Your actions in combat, you can be many, many, many things. So if I take the disengage action, I can't disengage and then cast a spell. I can't disengage, then attack. I can't disengage and then dodge. I can't do any of those things because my action in combat is to disengage. So you're sacrificing your attack, you're sacrificing your casting a spell, you're sacrificing all your other actions to disengage safely. So it's up to you to decide, do I risk them attacking me for free to move away, or do I want to not risk that? Okay, so it's up to you. So everything has a aura around it. Their threatening area, as you see, as I highlight, if you leave that area, that's when the enemy gets to attack you. So if it's Hamtag's turn, let's say he gets to go, right? These two creatures just come out of the woods right here. We started combat. We all rolled initiative. Hamtag won initiative. It's up to him. What do you want to do? You got these two creatures standing right there. If he takes a disengage action, they do not get to attack him as he walks away. If he tries to move away, and the reason I'm covering this one so thoroughly is because my players have a hard time remembering this rule or understanding this rule. And there's only a few rules you have to understand in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Very few rules. But this is one of the important ones. That's why I'm taking a few minutes to cover it. If you are adjacent to someone that threatens you, you move away from them, they will get an attack of opportunity on you, a free attack. That is their reaction. You only get one reaction per turn. So in this case, if Hamtag moves away and they both decide to take a free attack at him, That is all they can do as a reaction until after their turn. After your turn, your reaction resets. All right? So move away, disengage. So that's an action you can take in combat. Again, movement allows you to do any kind of movement. Actions in combat allow you to do a whole bunch of different things, but you can't disengage and then attack. You can't disengage and then cast a spell. You can't disengage and do anything other than a move. So disengage allows you to move your full movement away without having the enemy get an attack of opportunity on you. If this is a situation like this, all right, I'm just giving you some examples here. Hamtag gets to go first. He decides he's just going to move away. He's going to step away. Both of these creatures take their attack of opportunity. And let's say they miss, and then Hamtag decides to move away. He wants to, cover the wizard maybe, or whatever the situation is. Then Glassstaff takes his turn, right? And we're going to talk about some options that he has. And then it's Eldritch Daw's turn, and then it's Dog Sidious's turn. Now, if Dog Sidious says, oh, wait, I want to move away, and he goes to move away, remember, Glassstaff here, his reaction reset after his turn. So now he's got his reaction again. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. So if Dog Sidious says, oh, wait a minute, I'm just going to move away from these guys, and then I say, okay, well, Glassstaff takes his staff and swings at you, and Dog Sidious is like, well, wait a minute, he just swung at Hamtag. Well, he had his all his powers reset after he takes his turn. So once he takes his turn, he's got his reaction again. So every time you get one, every time. And obviously, as if Dog Sidious leaves, walks away, and gives Glassstaff an attack of opportunity, he does not give Nordic an opportunity, because notice he's not within the Nordic's threatening area. He's not within those spaces adjacent to it. So he can move away from the Nordic just fine. And also of note, this is just when you leave the enemy, right? So if it's, let's go back to the beginning, if it's Hamtag here, if Hamtag says, okay, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, right? He's done that, that's fine. Even though he was here, he was within this threatening area, he was here, he was within both of their threatening areas, and then he moved here, and he's still within both of their threatening areas. So he's never left their threatening area. So it allows you to basically run circles around other enemies or get into position on other enemies, because if let's say the situation was like this, Hamtag could move up, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. He could run right around this guy because he's not left his threatening area. So disengage allows you to move away from an enemy without them getting an attack of opportunity. Very, very important. But remember, that is your action in combat, not your move action. That is your action in combat, which means if you take a disengage, you won't get an attack, you won't get a spell, you won't get to do any of the other fancy dancy things we're going to look at. So that's disengage. You can take the dodge action. So dodge action is really good when you have multiple enemies upon you. What happens is, if you take the dodge action, anyone that attacks you with an attack, if it's an attack, they do with disadvantage, and you also get advantage on any dexterity saving throws, because you're dodging and you're weaving and you're moving and everything like that. So very good if multiple enemies are upon you. Take the dodge action, then everyone that swings at you takes it at disadvantage. If you're not familiar with 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and what advantage and disadvantage is, I will show you here. So let's say it's now Glassstaff's turn. He decides to take his staff. He's going to do it with disadvantage because Hamtag has taken the dodge action. When he goes and attacks, you see he rolled 2 dice. He rolled a 10 and a 10, but let's try it without getting the same up. He's got it with disadvantage. There we go. Let's try again. So when he does his attack, he's going to roll 2 12s. He rolled a 17, he rolled a 9. So with disadvantage, the 17 and the 9, he takes the lower result. So the 9 plus the 1 with disadvantage. If you have advantage, then you're going to take the higher dice. So obviously advantage gives you a great advantage. Disadvantage gives a person a great disadvantage because they got to take the lower number. So to get a really high number on a disadvantage, you got to roll 2 really high numbers. And on advantage, you only need 1 really high number to get it. And you also get the higher result. So with advantage, we'll roll that again and show you the difference. So with that, he rolled a 16 and a 19. So in this case, he gets the 19. If it would have been disadvantage, he'd take the 16, which still might end up hitting. But still, that's what advantage and disadvantage does. So dodge action allows you to... Anyone that attacks you with an attack has disadvantage on that attack. So harder for you to hit because you're dodging and weaving and you're not really trying to, you're blocking with your weapon as opposed to swinging with it, right? Help. You can take the help action. In this case, if, let's say, Dog Sidious was here, but Dog Sidious only has a bow for some reason, we'll just say, and we're going to look at that rule here in a minute. But since he doesn't really want to shoot, he's just going to give his attack. He's going to help Hamtag if Hamtag attacks an enemy. So the way it works is you have to be adjacent to your ally and the enemy that they're attacking. So Dog Sidious obviously can't help him attack the Nordic because he's not adjacent to the Nordic. In this case, Dog Sidious can help Hamtag attack the evil wizard, but he can't give him help on the Nordic. So if Hamtag attacks the Nordic, he just rolls it normally. If he attacks the evil wizard, then he gets it with advantage. So help, you're giving up your attack, and you're giving someone an advantage on their attack roll. Can be not really as helpful as it sounds, I find, but in other situations you might find it helpful. He's trying to break down, maybe they're in a dungeon, there are big monsters coming, they're trying to break through the door, Hamtag's there pounding on the door trying to get through, but he can't make it, so maybe Dog Sidious comes over and helps him so that Hamtag gets advantage anytime he's trying to break through the door or something. Maybe that would help. Maybe that would be a good situation to use help, I guess. I haven't found it that helpful. You can take your hide as an action, right? So let's say it's Aldrich Daw's turn. He's going to move 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And the reason that costs more movement is because anytime you're in hindering terrain, it costs you double the amount of movement points. So like to climb over this log here or to cross over, from say this space to this space, instead of 5 feet of movement, it would cost him 10 feet of movement because it costs you double to go through difficult terrain. So keep that in mind. It also costs you double if you move through your allies. Well, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Let's say Eldrick Dodd uses his move action to move over there. Now he's got his action in combat. His action in combat, he's going to try and hide because he doesn't want anyone targeting him. So he would roll a hide check to see if anyone sees him. If they don't see him anymore, then they can't target him with any attacks until maybe it's his next turn. So that's a hide action. You can take a search action. So maybe Eldrick Dog moves over here and he's searching. Maybe there's a situation where maybe there's a key that the players have to find to unlock the shackles. They got shackles on or whatever. And they know the key's here somewhere because they heard the evil wizard talking to his friend about it. Oh, I've got the key hidden over by the box or something. So he goes over there as his move action, and then as his action in combat, he decides to do a search. So there's the search option. And you can use an object. So let's step back just a minute before we talk about using an object. When you're doing your move action, when you're doing your move action, you do it. You can fly, you can swim, you can do all these other movements, but you can't do any of these other things during your move action. But what you can do during your move action is you can interact quickly with one object. So an example would be, I draw my sword as I move up. So if this is the situation again, and Hamtag won initiative, we're back to the beginning of combat. He doesn't have his weapon out because they're building camp, but he has his weapon on him. He says, okay, I'm going to take my move action, 5, 10, 15, 25, because it cost me double my movement to go over the log there on the ground. And as I'm moving up, I draw out my battle axe. So that is basically a free action to interact with one object during a move. Some examples are drawing or sheathing a weapon, opening or closing a door, drawing a potion from your backpack, picking up an axe, removing a ring from your finger, putting food in your mouth, planting a banner in the ground, drinking something in your hands, pulling a lever or a switch, pulling a torch out of a sconce on the wall, taking a book off a shelf, putting on a mask, things like that. Something that is quick and easy to do, you could do during your move action for free. Okay? So there's some good examples of that. And you can only interact with one and only one object during your move action, right? So, okay, come on, you silly, stupid thing. All right, so that is the use an object action. And we talked about search already. The last action you can take is you can, again, we're going to start over combat. Players are over here. They're building their camp. 2 creatures walk out. Dungeon Master says you see them. They see you. Roll initiative. Everyone rolls initiative. And Hamtag wins initiative. The last action you can take is you can ready an action. And what you do is you tell the Dungeon Master what you're doing, what the trigger is, and what the outcome will be. So you can say, all right, combat started. As a free action, I yell at these guys. They come out, and I say, don't approach us, or you'll feel the wrath of my weapon. And then I tell the Dungeon Master, if they approach 10 feet closer, I charge the closest one. So I've readied my action, right? And now it's the Glass Staff's turn. Glass says, okay, he casts a spell. Let's say he casts light. Poof. Because it's dark outside, and then he stands there. Eldritch Daw, he says the same thing. I ready a spell. If they approach closer than 10 more feet, I cast my spell. Dogsidius says, I ready my bow. If they approach more than 10 feet, I am going to shoot the closest person. Now it's the creature's turn. He says, the Dungeon Master says he starts charging you. Bump, bump, bump. And as soon as he moves his 10 feet, boom, all the triggers go off. So in order of initiative, Hamtag would then charge the closest enemy, right? Let's see, Arctic Dawes says he was casting a spell, so his spell would go off. You can, at that point, the player can choose to cancel what they had readied, right? They can, okay, I decided I'm not going to. Or they have to go through with the trigger, or they can only do what they said they were going to do. They can't say, oh, well, once he's triggered, I'm going to move back here now. No. You said you were going to cast a spell. So you either cast a spell or you don't do anything. You can't choose to change your mind. So you're readying, you're telling the Dungeon Master what you're doing, you're telling him what the trigger is, and then you're going to tell him the outcome of the trigger. And then last but not least, once the Nordic comes crashing up, a dog Sidious would then shoot his bow. And because he had readied his action there. So that's how readied actions work. You're telling the dungeon master. Let's just go back to the top. There we go. You're telling the dungeon master what you're doing, what the trigger is, and what the outcome will be. And you got to try to be as specific as possible to help. You can't just say, well, if I feel threatened, I'm going to cast a spell. What does that mean, threatened? You got to be a little bit more specific than that. You can't just say, something generic like that. It has to be an action that causes your trigger to go off, and then your reaction to that trigger. Okay, so that is the all the breakdown of what you can do. You have your movement action, and you have your action in combat. Movement, you can move, you can fly or swim or all that movement type stuff. And you can interact with one simple object. So if, let's say, we're in a dungeon, and it's Eldritch Daw's turn, he can move towards a door, and as he's moving there, he can pull the key out, okay? But he can't get to the door and then put the key in the door and then unlock the door and then open the door, because that's not interacting with one object, okay? So for your action, for your movements, you can run to the door while you're pulling the key out of your sack or out of your whatever you have. All right, so that would be your move action, and then the dungeon master would probably tell you for your action, you can put the key in and unlock the door and open the door. That would be your action. You can't just I'm moving, I'm pulling the key out, I'm unlocking the door, and I'm opening the door. No, it doesn't work that way. All right. So you get to interact during your move with one object for free, quickly and easily. You can't, as I'm moving forward, I'm going to tie my shoes. As I'm moving forward, I'm going to try to think of something else that would, I would have put my armor on. Okay, it's something. Remember, each round of combat is 6 seconds, right? So it's got to be something you can do in like 3 seconds or less, because you're still moving while you're doing this action as well. So some dungeon masters might be a little more lenient. It's up to your dungeon master. You can always tell him what you want to do, and then he might tell you, oh, okay, if you do that, it's going to be an action as opposed to a free action during your move. So just talk to your dungeon master about that. So actions in combat, again, attack. That's with your weapons. So you're swinging your swords, you're shooting your arrows, you're throwing your hand axes, you're stabbing people with daggers, whatever. Okay, casting a spell. Disengaging, again, I'm going over disengaging because my players have the hardest time with this one for some reason. I don't understand it, but it's very simple. Every creature has a threatening area, and even the players. See, the players also have a threatening area, which is all the spaces adjacent to them. If you leave an enemy's threatening space, they get a free attack on you, a free reaction to attack. So if Hamtag moves away, if he walks away from this creature, the creature will attack him with his claws as a reaction for free. Again, it makes sense. You're not backing away cautiously. That's not what you're doing by moving, right? If you're taking your move action, you're not backing away cautiously. Backing away cautiously is disengaging so the enemy doesn't get a free attack on you. So remember that. If you're adjacent to an enemy and you want to move away, again, every time you move away, in this case, we have 2 enemies. I'm within both of the threatening areas. If I move away, they both can take their reaction if they want. It's up to the dungeon master to decide how the creatures interact. They can choose to let you go. That's fine. I don't care if you move away from me. I want you away from me. Maybe the wizard's like, I want you to stay away from me so I can cast my spell, or, maybe whatever. But they only get one reaction. So in this case, if it's Hamtag's turn and he runs up and he's charging past his creature to get over next to the wizard, right? As he runs by, the Nordic gets a free attack on him, right? And Hamtag knows this and he's fine with it, but he wants to get next to the wizard. So that's what he does, right? So then the wizard's turn. Now the wizard's like, oh shit, I got this big fighter guy bringing his battle axe. I'm going to disengage from him and move away. So maybe he moves, back in the corner away from Hamtag, but he disengages so Hamtag can't get his attack on him. But he can't cast a spell then, right? So then it's Eldritch Daw's turn. Well, Eldritch Daw, he casts a spell, right? Now Dog Sidious says, oh, you know what? I'm going to move, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Well, he just ran through the Nordic's threatening area. The Nordic didn't get his reaction because you only get one reaction. He already used it when Hamtag came crashing through. So you can use this rule to your advantage if you're smart, if your players are smart. You can get the player, or you can get the monsters to attack your toughest creatures, or your toughest players with the most hit points, and then let your squishy guys get into position without having to worry about attacks of opportunity from the enemy. Attacks of opportunity are those free attacks I keep talking about, right? So Dog City says run right by him because this creature didn't get his attack, his reaction back. You don't get your reaction until after you're taking your turn. So Nordic, now it's the Nordic's turn. He comes up, he takes an attack. Now he's got his reaction again. So now it's Hellsfar. So if Hellsfar comes running, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then is within his reach, and then moves away, the creature could then use his attack of his reaction to do his attack of opportunity if he chooses to or not. So tactical. It turns it, you don't want to turn Dungeons and Dragons into a tactical combat simulator. That's not what we're trying to do here. But you can use certain of the rules to your advantage when you feel the time is right. If you have your tough fighter run by the enemies and all the enemies take their attacks, but their reaction opportunities, then the other players can move by. But you don't want to do that all the time because that's not what Dungeons and Dragons isn't about. Tactical combat and trying to manipulate the rules to your advantage. But in certain situations, it's helpful, to understand the basic combat rules and to know what you can do and what you can't do. So disengaging, players have a problem with that one. The other thing, let's see, how long have we gone? 38 minutes. All right, so we're going to break this up into 2 episodes so we have some more to talk about in the next episode. So we talked about move actions, actions in combat, right? 2 different things. During your move action, you can only move and interact with one object quickly for free during your move. Pulling out a weapon, grabbing a potion, putting on a ring, putting on your hood, putting on a mask, things that are quick and easy like that. I'm running up to the door. I can push the door open if it's unlocked. All right. So interacting with one object for free quickly. It's got to be something that you can do quickly. You can't put your armor on. You can put your shield on. You can do things like that are quick and easy. And then, of course, your other thing, that's move. Then you have your other goodie thing, right? This is the big boy. This is the one where you get to do all your stuff. This is your attacks. This is casting a spell. This is disengaging from an enemy. This is dodging enemies. This is helping one another, searching, hiding, and readying in action, right? I'm doing this. If this happens and I'm doing this as a result of that action. When the enemy steps on the trap door, I pull the lever. Boom. There you go. So when the enemy steps on the trap door, you pull the lever, you get your reaction when the trigger happens. You don't have to wait. Doing a readied action is very good if you can think ahead and plan what you're thinking about doing and what your other players might do, because there are other rules in combat you should be associated with, which we're going to talk about in the next episode. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.